Alright, today I'm reviewing Spider-Man No Way Home, the third movie of the Marvel Spider-Man series. It stars Tom Holland. At the end of the last movie, the world found out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and Peter Parker goes to Doctor Strange. Well, really, first they're rejected from MIT, which is kind of a weird plot point anyway. And then he's like, "Oh, the MIT was the only school we could go to, or something." So he goes to Doctor Strange to make it so that no one remembers that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, so his friends can go to MIT. But in the process of doing that, instead of making everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, he brings everyone from every other dimension who knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And that includes every supervillain from every other Spider-Man movie, like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man and the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. Like, all of them come and start wreaking havoc on New York City in the MCU. And the other Spider-Man show up as well. It's Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. And all the actors reprise their roles. Jamie Foxx comes back as Electro. Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. And that was very impressive. Even, like, the Lizard is back from the Andrew Garfield movies. And I enjoyed this movie quite a bit, even though I felt it was kind of stealing the plot of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, but they were doing it with everything that's come before. I thought that was a really neat idea, and they were implementing it very well. And it's the first time they've done something like that in the MCU. I think this was like everything that people wanted WandaVision to be while they were watching it, because they kept referencing, like, kind of hinting that, like, the other universes are out there. And then the guy who played Quicksilver in the X-Men movies played Quicksilver in that, but then his name was actually Boner. But this time they didn't pull a boner on us. And also, Daredevil was in it, just as a quick cameo. I did really enjoy this, but there was something about it that bothered me. But it's like, I can't quite put my finger on what it is. I worry it's something I call the Zack Snyder effect, because sometimes I'll watch Zack Snyder's movies, or this used to happen more back in the day, like 300, for example, or Batman v Superman. I'm ashamed to admit that the first time I watched those movies, I thought they were pretty good. But like, without even rewatching them or anything, like, something kind of bugged me about them, and I kept thinking about it, and as I thought about it, I was like, oh, it was pretty good, except it did this thing that annoyed me. Oh, and then it did this thing that I didn't like, it kept like lowering in my mind until I was realized by the end of it, like weeks later, like, no, that was actually a really bad movie. I'm just thinking it was good at the time, like at the time something about it I enjoyed, but as I just thought about it, slowly I realized, no, actually, I hated that movie, and I don't know why I enjoyed it initially. Like, the movie tricked me into liking it. Not sure how. Just by being, like, really intense and exciting. But then, once you filter out that intense excitement, you see that underneath there's nothing really holding it together outside of that. Like, you can't make an action movie purely with action. It needs to have a solid plot, or it's just garbage. Solid plot and characters. I'm not even really talking about this movie, but there's just something about this movie that bugged me, and I'm still not totally sure why. But let's deduce that. Well, I felt the major plot points, like, all the minor stuff was all implemented well. I mean, like, Peter Parker, Spider-Man stories back in the comic book days, like, the minor stuff was just as important to Peter as, like, the major stuff. Like, oh, Green Goblin's attacking, I have to save the city, but I also have to pick up Aunt May's prescription from the pharmacy, or whatever. But here, I kind of feel like maybe the major plot points were a bit forced, while the minor stuff was more fun and interesting to me. Like, especially this thing at the end, which I'm gonna spoil, I guess, but just because, like he does that spell at the beginning, but then changes his mind, and so it, like, gets trapped in this box that Doctor Strange makes. But then, like, right at the last second, and they're carrying this box around with them their whole time, because, like, Peter Parker doesn't want him to do the spell, because then all the supervillains will go back and immediately die, because that's what happens in the original movies. Right at the last second, it's like he's finally saves everyone, more or less, but then he, like, breaks the spell, so then the spell's happening anyway, and it's going to cause this great rift in reality that might bringing these beings from the nether realm or something. I thought they might have been the Celestials, but still can't remember if Celestials is Marvel or DC. I think it's DC, but I don't remember. Oh, created by Jack Kirby. Yeah, Celestials are Marvel. Okay, so I thought they might have been like a hint at the Celestials. Apparently were created by Jack Kirby, but he did everything. He was the best. But so Peter Parker saves the day by saying, how about just do the spell where everyone forgets who Spider-Man is? Doctor Strange's like, that'll work. but everyone will forget who you are, even me, pretty much. And like, this is how he does it. And everyone forgets who Spider-Man is. And it just felt like it was really forced in there to make you feel something about everyone forgetting who Spider-Man is. Because everyone knows this is gonna, this'll stay permanent for sure. Rolling my eyes. So yeah, I think that was pretty much it. That was probably my major complaint about this movie. That all the major plot points felt really forced. Even though what happened afterwards and stuff, like, even like him causing the spell, and like that caused Doctor Strange and Spider-Man to fight, and that was really cool. But why he cast the spell, why Spider-Man had him cast the spell, the fact that Doctor Strange agreed to cast the spell, because it was for a really ridiculous and stupid reason, I think. Then all the things he did after the spell was being cast that made it all screw up and stuff. It was just like, it was really forced because it felt like kind of out of character for Spider-Man. Because like, why did he do this? And also, why did he do this now just because they couldn't get into MIT? There's other schools. But because they couldn't get into MIT, he had to do it now. Not because the whole world knows he's Spider-Man. No, he was actually like, yeah, that's all right. Whatever. I'm the most famous person in the world now. Yay, or something. It was like kind of a weird plot point. That was a weird plot point too. And I think they only did that because it carried over from the last movie. It was like they were trying to like kind of forget the last movie and just do their own thing. And, I mean, I'm all right with that, but, like, if you're going to do your own thing, make it right. Don't force all these stupid plot points in it just because you want to do it that way. I felt it almost would have been more interesting if there was just no reason, Just everyone started showing up for no reason at all. Why did it have to have a reason behind it? But, I mean, like, I think Loki almost covered that, because, like, they're almost just carrying on from Loki because he's the one who screwed up the timeline. So now there's a bunch of diverging timelines. And it could have been like just maybe hinted that they caused it instead. The whole movie, like every time there's a major plot point, again, the minor stuff, like the consequences of every major plot point is implemented great and very entertaining. But like those plot points themselves I felt were forced and kind of dumb. Okay, I'm glad I deduced that. Figured out what's wrong with this movie, I guess. Because everything else was great, actually. Like the acting was great, the humor was pretty funny. I loved all the cameos. This was one of those movies that had like almost too many stars because like, every villain in a Spider-Man movie is almost a pretty big name most of the time. But they used them well, and nobody was like showboating over anyone else. Well, except for Willem Dafoe, but that's just because he's such a great actor and he's so great as the Green Goblin. Man. Hope they bring him back over and over again. Now he's a good guy, kind of. But yeah, it was like everything else was really good, I think. And because of that, I'll probably give it an 8 out of 10. Because it was just those major plot points, but because it was like almost every major plot point was just dumb and forced, it really brought the movie down because of that. But everything else, like the consequences of those dumb plot lines were very entertaining and well put together. It's just very well done overall. The action was very entertaining, the cinematography was great, the special effects went above and beyond with like they always do for Marvel movies. As good as it can be at that time. But yeah, it was a really great movie. I really liked it. I think I'll stick with the 8 out of 10. Just those major plot points brought it down. The consequences and how they were implemented and everything of those plot points were really well done. It's too bad it had to end with one of those plot points. Anyway, tune in tomorrow for another review. Please like and subscribe if you want. And feel free to suggest anything you would like to see me review.